In this lesson, I will teach you about mixing. What is mixing and why is it important? Mixing involves taking your audio that you have used and mixing it to sound right, mixing it to how you want listeners to hear your audio through their headphones or through their speakers. And this is important so we can make our songs more professional sounding. Before we get into this, I will give everybody a fair warning. I highly recommend you use a pair of headphones, not earbuds, because you cannot do this by ear unless you have a pair of headphones, not earbuds. But if you don't got headphones, then yeah, I would recommend earbuds, because I do know there are some really good earbuds out there, and there are producers I know. There's people I know that used AirPods to make their music, to mix their music. And I'll also say this. Whatever you make using your headphones, it'll probably sound different in your car stereo, and I'll explain. There's a million headphones on the market, so some headphones have more bass than others. Some headphones have more mid and more treble than others. And so taking that into account, however you mix your song on your headphones, it'll probably sound right in your headphones, but it might sound off in your car. So for example, if your car stereo system is more balanced out in its sound, but your headphones that you use to mix music are more treble and bassy, then it's probably gonna sound very different than in your car stereo system. You know what I mean? You guys see what I'm saying? So one of my favorite headphones, and it's cheap, it's very cheap, you can get at Walmart for about $20, is a pair of headphones I've been using almost 6 years. I even switched to professional Sony headphones, and these cheap headphones are probably the best I've ever used when it comes to mixing, called J-Lab Studio Wireless. They're Bluetooth wireless headphones, and they're about $20 last time I checked, so I'd recommend that. So let's get into it. Mixing. Like I said, your goal is to take your audio that you recorded and make it sound how you want it to sound to the listener, right? So if you have a high treble voice and you want to bring out more of the bass, this is where mixing would become involved, right? Or you have a high treble voice that's very high pitchy and you're trying to turn down that high treble-y, that's where this would come in. Or if you have a very low, deep bass-like voice, you're probably going to want to up the treble on your bass so people can hear your words better. So that's where mixing is going to come in. Also, so your voice does not overpower the instrumental, because if your voice overpowers the instrumental, it can throw listeners off. But I'll also say this before we get into it. How you mix a song is going to be different song by song, and it's also going to vary on the instrumental you use. Some instrumentals are very high bass, so you're going to have to mix your voice differently to accommodate that. Some instrumentals have, the drums go crazy in there. So you're going to have to, tune your voice in the mixing process to be able to fit that instrumental. So it's always going to vary song by song. There's not going to be a straightforward method with your mixing. It's always going to be, vary song by song. So let me explain mixing real quick. Imagine this. I'll open up the menu real quick. So we'll tap the fourth button at the top, the settings, and we'll go down here to where treble and bass is. But we'll tap plugins and EQ, then we'll go all the way down to the bottom and tap visual EQ. And I'm just showing you an example. Now notice how it brought this thing up. This is a visualizer. It'll show the audio waves of everything you recorded on this track. So for example, you're going to hear my voice. Let me turn off the instrumental real quick. But I'll also explain this. Notice how there's the headphone icon that's lit up, and there's the headphone icon on this that's lit up. When you tap that button, that's basically you telling GarageBand, hey, I only want this audio to play in my headphones right now. So I have all the other tracks muted. You don't even got to mute them. All you got to do is just tap this, and then, those are the only songs that'll play in your headphones. So anyways, we'll go back down here, and we'll open up the visual EQ. And all this is it visually shows what your recorded audio looks like in sound form. So example. You guys can see the audio waves, right? That's basically what this is. It's a visualizer for you to visually see. Now, right here at the top, you have your bass. Right here in the middle, you have your mids. Right here on the far right, you have your treble, right? So this is what I'm going to do just to show you as an example because I don't want to fuck up my shit. Now, I'm going to explain this. When it comes to mixing, I am not the best when it comes to mixing. But this is the best way I heard someone explain it. Imagine you have a couch. And bass, right here at the top left, bass is a person. Mid, right here on the top, middle, it's a person. And treble on the far right is a person. You're trying to get all three of these people. Just pretend bass, mid, and treble are people. So I can explain this to you. Now, visualize these three people, and you're trying to fit them on this couch, right? But imagine this. You can change. You're trying to make everyone perfectly fit on the couch together. But what you're allowed to do is you're allowed to change the weight and the body dimensions of each person. So let's say, hypothetically, mid is a more heavier set person. You have the ability to make mid skinnier. Let's say bass is a little bit on the skinny side. You can, in this visualization example I'm giving you, you can make bass a little chunkier, right? Until all three of them perfectly fit on the couch. So that's the example I'm going to give. Now, I'm going to turn the instrumental on. You're going to hear how this sounds with the instrumental. You can clearly make out the words. It's Spanish rapping, right? Now, I have perfectly mixed this to the instrumental, but we're going to start out with a blank slate so I can show you how to mix. And it's like I said, mixing is going to be different on each song. So I'm going to start out with a blank slate. I'm going to show you the easier beginning techniques. I'm going to show you the harder techniques. And that's what it sounds like as a blank slate. Now you can go back and you can open up your little settings panel here and scroll down. And this is the easy way to do it. If you're not like me and you don't want to do all the hardcore, advanced editing stuff, there's an easy way to do it. So notice I have a high treble bass. I have a high treble voice here. What I'm going to do is we can go over here to our easy access panel and we can turn down the treble on my voice a bit. You can clearly hear the difference, right? Or if we up the treble, it sounds like... And it brings out my treble in my voice a lot more. But what do you notice? What's the difference between this with the treble on my voice up and this with the treble in my voice down? Because I have a naturally high treble voice. Well, besides the fact that one's up and one's down, because I have a high treble voice, when I turn the treble up, it overpowers the instrumental, and you can hear it right here. So what we'll do, because I have a high treble voice, and this is going to vary on your voice. So if you have a very deep bass voice, you're probably going to want to turn the treble up. But if you're like me with a high treble voice, you're going to want to turn the treble down a bit. And you can play around with it, right? Now let's say I want to turn the bass on my voice up. We can do that right here. And you can hear my bass in the voice a lot more. Or we can turn it down and it'll sound like this. and it sounds like it's coming out of, I guess you could say, a telephone. So these are the basic controls when it comes to mixing. Not any of the advanced stuff just yet, but the basics, right? And then you have your compressor. And all compressor does is it basically compresses your audio, like I've said before. It compresses your audio. It gets all, the more harsher sounds out. So, example. And you can also use the compressor to raise your voice here. And these are the basic functions of compressor, treble, and bass. Play around with it. If you have GarageBand open right now, play around with it just to hear what it sounds like with your voice. And then, when you think you've got something solid, come back to this video and I will show you how to do the more advanced functions. Now, if you're ready for the more advanced functions so you can have more control over your voice, this is what you'll do. You'll tap plugins and EQ right here. And you'll go down to visual EQ. But what you need to do is you need to tap right there, that little on button, and make sure it's highlighted blue to turn the visual EQ on. Basically, this visual EQ is the more advanced version of the bass, treble, and compressor feature here. This is just the easy, quick access version. But visual EQ is the more advanced function for more advanced producers. So we'll turn it on. And you can see our voice here. You can literally see our voice right there. And what you can do is right here on the right, you have the gain feature. This basically says, hey, I want to turn the track volume up. So we can turn the track volume up to 10 and it sounds this loud. Or we can turn it down all the way to -20. And you can hardly hear it anymore, right? And that's what's cool about it. That's what's cool about that. But now, let's get into the more advanced features. So, and I'm not using my headphones on this right now. I'm just going by ear, so I'm probably going to get the mixing all messed up. But this is just to show you guys an example. So, we're going to start out with a blank slate. And what you can do, right, is let's say you made a mistake right here. You can just, okay, so, oops, I accidentally moved the green right there and didn't mean to. You can just tap that green circle twice. And it'll just go back and reset itself. Or example, purple, boom, tap it twice, tap green twice, it'll reset itself. So, let's look at the audio waves here. First thing I notice when I listen to the voice and the beat is my voice is too low. So what we're going to do, and you're going to have to do this, is experiment. Experiment with, finding the correct volume for your voice. So, right there would be perfect for this song I'm working on. But for your song, it's going to be different because I'm not listening to your song. So you're going to have to adjust the volume first to figure out the right, the right volume for your track. And once you figured out, okay, this is the right volume for our audio recording here to where it's not overpowering the instrumental, then we get into the mixing process. So we recognize that my voice in this song is very high trebly, right? So we're going to take the treble right here, and this is the treble, and we're going to play around with it. And if I was you, I would play around with the treble right here in GarageBand so you can get a feel for it, but I'll show you what I mean. Notice how different it sounds as we move it across the grid. Right? Sounds different as we moved it along the grid, right? Now let's do the mid. And what you get to do with these advanced features is if you move it slowly, what I like to do is I like to hit play and move it around while it's playing so I can hear my voice and hear how it's changing until I find, the correct part of my voice that I like to go along with the instrumental. So for example, right there, perfect for mids. And since we don't got a naturally heavy bass voice, we're probably going to have to turn the bass up a bit right here. So, play around with the bass. Now, it's not the best mixing there, but this is just to give you a general idea of the more advanced mixing features. Because like I said, you know, your goal is to try to make your voice sound right with the instrumental. And if your voice is not sounding kosher over the instrumental, it's probably going to make a lot of listeners feel disoriented. The listeners won't be able to make out the words you are saying. And so that's basically mixing in a nutshell. But like I said, when it comes to mixing, you have to figure out what works best for your voice. It's always going to be different song by song, dependent on the instrumental you use, dependent on the microphone you use to record. There's people I know that use their iPhone mic to record and make some really good songs. That's a possibility. So this has just been a basic understanding in mixing. And I'll also show you this one last feature, right? Let me show you. Let's say, for example, we want to make a certain section of our audio recording louder or quieter. So right here where I say hell yeah. Let's say I want to turn down the volume on that hell yeah. Right? Now I'll teach you something. To turn down that specific word, because you're going to have to zoom in. We have deduced that this area right here is me saying hell yeah. Now what you do is you double tap the audio, like literally double tap it. And you'll have these things come up. You have a delete, a copy, select all, loop, and split. What I do is I tap split, and I try to find where I say hell yeah in the audio. Now, right here is where I say hell yeah in the audio. So basically, we're going to split it right here. So it becomes its own separate audio file. This is how it was before. It was this entire audio file, but then we split it, and now it's this audio file, right? And now we're going to want to turn down me saying hell yeah. We're going to want to turn it down a bit because it's too loud, I guess. Double tap it again. Tap settings. And then we have gain. With gain, you can adjust the audio and you can just play it back and forth. So this is what it's going to sound like if I turn it up a bit. Sounds louder, right? Go back to settings on there and we can turn it all the way down 9 decibels. Sounds a lot lower, right? And that's basically mixing in a nutshell. Just a very basic, easy tutorial. You're going to have to experiment with it with your own songs, but just take this as advice and figure it out. You're going to spend a lot more time on mixing than you are on the actual recording process in and of itself. I hope you're able to get as much as you could out of that masterclass in mixing. Now let's move on to the next section.